Hi YouTube, welcome to the Emporium Outdoors. My name is Michael. In today's project I'm going to make a new saw out of an old snapped Silky BIGBOY 2000. I'm not going to say who snapped the blade, but I'm sure you can guess. Anyway, because the blades are expensive, I thought I could actually make something out of it and didn't feel that I just wanted to throw it away. And I pre-prepared one side of the blank just to kind of get a handle feel that I thought would work. I quickly ground out the shape using a grinder just to get that down. Now I'm just fitting the tang inside the handle. I'm just marking out for a dog bone shape in order to lock the blade into the handle, because there's going to be quite a bit of force on it. I don't want it to come loose, and it is quite a short tang. So I've got access to a mill, so I quickly just threw it on the mill, but you may have to do this with just hand and chisel. It shouldn't take too long, it's actually pretty straightforward. I just had it there, so I thought this would be quicker for me. And here I'm just finishing up with the chisel, just to tidy up all the edges. Next, we're going to mix up some epoxy, and we're going to use that to actually glue the blade into place, as well as put the two handles together. So I mixed a good amount of epoxy together and finally clamped the handles together to allow it to cure and dry. I'm just going to trim the handle now to make sure that both of them are the same size, and that'll make sanding them much easier. So I'm just rough sanding the shape. I'm not too worried about getting it perfect straight away. I just want it to get pretty close to the kind of handle size that I want. Now I've switched to a finer grade sandpaper belt, and I'm doing some of the more finer work. The final sanding will be done by hand, and I probably won't show that because it's pretty dull. This is dull, but sanding by hand is duller. So I'm going to drill to put a brass pin inside the handle, and that's going to give it extra security. with all the force that's going to be applied to it. Obviously it's a saw. So I'm just using a lathe to run down the brass into a pin form, and it's got to be just over 1/4 inch. So I'm just doing a bit of sanding and getting the pin to size. And then I'll part it off to its main material. So I'm going to epoxy the pin into the handle. And then just snug it down with a few hammer blows. So I did do some hand finishing with the sanding just to bring it up to, I think it was about 400 grit. And then I'm just adding some linseed oil just to protect the wood. That's what I use for all my outdoor wooden handles. Next, I'm going to need a sheath to put the saw into. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy, just something to keep the blade secure, because obviously it's not going to fold back into itself as the original saw did. So I'm using a 4-5 ounce veg tan leather, so it's not super thick, it's actually quite light. It's what you would use for making things like wallets and things like that. So I'm just using a 3D printed boss so that I can imprint Esme's name. I'm just using some contact adhesive to hold the two parts together. And a big lump of steel just to hold that down. I'll let that cure for a little while. Next I'm going to groove the leather for the stitch lines. This allows the stitching to lie flat in the leather. It makes it look good, but it also protects the stitching as well because it's not proud of the sheath. So now I'm just beveling the edges just to give it a nice shape. And that will also help when I come to burnish the edges, so you flatten the edges by rubbing them with a piece of wood typically. So this is my new sewing machine. I'm still dialing the whole thing in, so I haven't done much work with it. So I'm a little bit cautious at the moment. I find machine stitching is not as good as hand stitching. You get a much better finish with hand stitching. But obviously with machine stitching it's quick and you can get a fair result, but it's nowhere in the same ballpark as being hand stitched. I'm just going back a couple of stitches to lock the stitch in so it doesn't come undone. You may notice the piece of duct tape on the foot, and that's to stop the serrations actually grabbing in and marking the leather too much. So I've dampened the leather and I'm actually wet fitting the blade inside. And what that will do is actually make sure that the teeth of the saw doesn't dig into the leather. Once it's actually formed and dried, it should provide enough space to make sure that the blade doesn't catch too much. Now I'm just burnishing the edges just to give it a nice finished look. Now the final step is to use some of the wax. This is a Nick wax product. That will protect it from the weather and hopefully give it kind of a deeper shade. This is a natural colour. I didn't bother dyeing it. I wanted to make it look a little bit rustic, and I really like that natural colour. So that's the finished product. I'm actually quite happy the way it's turned out. It's not perfect, obviously. I think it's a great way to use the old blade, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And I think that'll be a nice piece of equipment I can put on the side of my rucksack. So that'll be coming to the woods with me in the future. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and until next time, take care. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you like my videos, leave me a comment, maybe a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.